Tell me a blind spot that I have, and this is unrehearsed.
Okay. So
Help people. So here, this is me. I'm a leader. I go, hey, I got some idiosyncrasies. I know that. You and I are working together. We work together for a while. There's some things I don't know about myself. Could be a blind spot, or could just be feedback that you have. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Between the Lanes, and we're so glad that you're with us. And our real prayer is that you are growing as a leader.
yes.
So I hope you've kept up. Maybe you're new to the podcast. Welcome, glad that you're here. If you've been watching, maybe you've kind of come in and out or whatever. I hope you have some kind of metric by which you are growing as a leader. Our whole point here is recognizing that between the different lanes that we run in, you have a lot of different hats you're wearing. Maybe you're a mom, you're a business owner, you're a corporate executive, you're a student. A lot of lanes, a lot of ways that we wear hats. And so our hope is that through all of the topics we cover, you will be able to grow as a leader. So, Dad, we got another topic today, and how you feeling?
I'm feeling good, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm excited to discuss the topic at hand today.
Okay. You're excited about it.
I'm excited about it.
Okay. Good. That's good news. When we're excited to talk to you about a topic, that should be good. And we're excited to talk to you about a topic today. So here is the topic at hand. So every leader, let's just say it this way, it starts by just every person. You have blind spots. Now, I was going to say you have a blind spot. You might have one. You might have a dozen. Okay. Here's the point. We all have blind spots. There's things we don't know, we can't see about ourselves, but what we can do and what we can know as a leader is that I know I have blind spots, and so I do things, I build protective systems around my life so that those blind spots don't limit me as a leader and don't hurt my organization. Give me some intro thoughts about blind spots as you see it.
Yeah, I think one of the best ways to illustrate blind spots is I think about my car. When I learned how to drive, of course, we didn't have all the fancy electronics that they have today in cars, but the driving instructor said, when you get ready to change lanes, you need to look over your shoulder to see what's in your blind spot before you change lanes. Turn on a blinker and change. And even today, it amazes me. There's times when I forget and I look in my side mirror and I don't see anything. I look at my rearview mirror, don't see anything, but there's somebody in my blind spot.
Blind spot, yeah.
And if I start to edge over, I get a,
Yep.
And that happens in relationships, that happens in leadership situations. We're driving at a certain pace in our leadership activities, and if we don't look over our shoulder, or if we don't have some accountable systems, something will be in our blind spot and we won't even know it.
All right, if I know that blind spots exist, I know I probably have one, but I'm not able to identify it myself. How do I find out that I got a blind spot?
Yeah, I think the best way to protect yourself against blind spots is by saying, I know I have them, and if you're a real friend, if we're a team, a partnership, I need you to tell me when you see a blind spot that I don't see.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a couple of ways that blind spots develop. They develop when something that you're involved in you don't think is your responsibility. And so because it's not your responsibility, you set it aside, you don't concentrate on it, and somebody that's with you may be wondering, why aren't you concerned about this? Why aren't you taking this matter into hand? And you go, in my mind, I've set it aside because it's not my responsibility.
Yeah, so in that way, it's like you're sort of tying it to a blind spot. That might be an organizational blind spot. It also might be you have blinders. You have blinders on, and the blinders actually create the blind spot.
Yes.
So you get so focused and so sort of tunnel vision on what is your area, your responsibility, whatever, that it prohibits you from looking beyond the blinder to actually see something that you might be able to give input into somebody else, or might be able to help the organization, whatever the case is, but you can't get past your own blinder.
Yeah, there's a psychological term that actually plays into this whole issue of blind spots, and it's called, it's a part of your brain. It's called the reticular activation system, or short for RAS. And in your RAS is like a filing system for your experiences. And your RAS, if you experience something and you think, this is taken care of, it's done, your brain files it in a certain place, and then you don't think about it anymore, and it sets the framework for a blind spot. I don't think about that anymore. It's already taken care of. I'm not going to worry about it. And then a situation develops, and you don't remember it. You don't think about it. It's off your screen. You go, I don't ever remember thinking about that, saying that, talking about that. It's because your RAS has filed it, and it's off your table. Now, as I say that, can you think of a situation where maybe you filed something, or somebody confronted you about a blind spot?
In that example, I'm thinking probably Belinda has the most to speak into those areas of my life. You think about the relationships that are closest to you.
Sure.
Are obviously the ones that are going to recognize the blind spots or the blinders that you have in your own life. And I think when it comes to, if I start with a marriage and I go, are there areas of my life that I've got a blinder on, and so I don't look into these areas? So over the course of, Belinda and I have been married almost 29 years, and there are things in our marriage that from the beginning we have said, we've gone to marriage conferences, we've worked on our marriage, we've read books, we even teach at conferences, we do this now. And yet there are things that along the journey she has told me about her, and it goes in my mind and I go, yep, I got it. But then there's a default in me. So this could be my own blinder or the way I'm wired, that it just maybe didn't sink into my system strong enough. And about another 18 months later, we have another argument, or we have another relational come to Jesus moment where she's letting me know, hey, this is what you did, and it meant, I took it like this. And we've talked about this before. I've told you that, and I go, I guess now that you're saying it, I remember talking about it. I don't know how to get that into my system. So I think there's blinders that come on us, and we can look at that in the deepest relationships and see how that affects how we lead in that relationship.
Yeah. So in my case, one of the things that I try and do with people that I lead, recognizing that if I have a blind spot, I don't know I have a blind spot. And some of the blind spots are created by the idiosyncrasies of my personality. And I may be rubbing on you as we work together, because I like structure and order, and I like systems in place, and you like a little creative flair in what you do, and so I'm all the time trying to organize our connection with each other, and my idiosyncrasy is a blind spot to the effect that it has on you.
Yeah.
And so what I do, or have tried to do, is with some degree of regularity, not out of insecurity, so I don't do it every week, but I do it with some regularity to say, hey, are any of my idiosyncrasies bothering you?
Yeah.
I want to communicate the fact that I know they're there. I don't necessarily know how they're impacting you, but I want to invite your feedback in this.
Yeah, we've had that conversation both as a father and son, and in working together. And I think it's a very vulnerable question as a leader to ask somebody. I mean, because you have to create the right atmosphere to do it. Because if you're really asking that and you really mean it, then you have to have created the atmosphere that someone's willing to go, yeah, when you do this, here's how I take it. Here's what it means to me. But I think it's a fantastic question to invite feedback that says, look, I don't know myself to the degree that I may be self-aware to a certain degree, but I am aware enough to know that my idiosyncrasies could be affecting you. Now I need to know how they are. And the great thing about it is when we lead teams, could be a variety of people, one idiosyncrasy affects someone one way, another one affects someone the other way, and before you know it, you kind of start looking like a pretty dysfunctional guy because your idiosyncrasies are affecting everybody in lots of different ways. But what you're learning, the learning out of that, obviously, on this topic is what are blind spots I have and how do they affect people? But the other dynamic, you're learning about your people. Yeah. You're learning what is required in them to properly be managed and overseen and given leadership. And so I think that's that question is such a good question that invites more of a conversation than just a blind spot conversation. It's a conversation that helps you truly build the relationship with your team that you're looking for. And it takes a degree of humility to ask that question. Mm-hmm. You know, if I'm leading somebody and I think you don't have, I'm over you. You don't speak into me. I speak into you. Yeah. But humility says, no, I'm here and we're a team. Yeah. And as it goes with you, so it goes with me. So is there anything I do that's bothering you? Yeah. Be vulnerable for a second. What's feedback you've gotten about that? You've asked that question, maybe from me or from others. What do people say? What are some of your blind spots? Here's something some feedback I got that really changed me. This was a few years ago, so I really activated on the feedback I got. But if I'm a to-do list. I like to check things off on my to-do list, and I had a very bad habit of trying to pack too much into thinking I can get this done. That'll be a 10-minute deal. I can return this phone call before I meet you for lunch, and then I don't factor in that this phone call might be more than I expected, and so rather than meeting you when I said I would, I'm 10 minutes late. Mm. And so it was a blind spot. Mm. I didn't realize I did it, but I did it so consistently that a guy said to me one time, do you know I said, any of my idiosyncrasies bothering you? And he said, do you know that you're late to meetings all the time? And I sort of looked at him like, no, I'm not. And in fact, I might have even said, really? Yeah. I really am? And then he gave me some examples. Mm. And what I realized is, I look at my watch and it's 15 minutes till the meeting starts, and I look and I go, okay, I think I can do this. Mm. And I never estimate it right. So rather than being to the meeting early, I pack something in, it takes me longer than I expect, and then I show up and go, hey, I'm sorry I'm late, but so. Yeah. So I started monitoring, based on that feedback, my timeliness as it showed up to meetings, because he went on to say, because you're late, other people think they can be late. Because you're leading the meeting. Yeah, so it's like, well, Tom said this was going to start at 2 o'clock, but he's not going to be there until 2:10. Right. So I don't have to be there right at 2. Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great example. I was thinking about again, how do you invite the feedback? And one of the things we talk about in our cohort, we talk about authority. Yep. And there's a lot of different ways that you can view authority. There's several different examples of authority in our life, but one of the things that you do when you are inviting that question is actually it's an aspect of actually giving authority to someone else. You're gifting authority. And even to people who you oversee, who technically maybe you're the authority of, you're giving them the authority to coach you, teach you, reveal something about yourself. And you know, the whole topic of authority is a whole other topic, but it's one that's really critical. But I look at and how we view authority, how we relate to authority. But I think about the area of blind spots to go, I, as an authority figure, want to set the example. I know I have them. Can you help me? And I'm giving you the authority in my life. So there's clearly there's a humility that comes when you do it, and I think that's part of what in leadership we want to lead with humility and inviting that feedback. So even you being able to say, I asked for the feedback, I got it, and then I became actionable, and I turned it into, you know, I recognize it. One of the things, I don't know if this is what led to it, but one of the things you do really well, what I got from you, is, you know, basically creating block patterns on your calendar that hold blocks and so forth. And so being able to do that helps you factor in time dynamics that I can imagine might even tie back to that feedback that you got.
Yeah, every once in a while I backslide in my commitment to this. I need somebody to hold me accountable in that, because I do tend to think I can get more done than I can actually get done. And sometimes you've done this for me where you said, Dad, you don't need to do that right now. It's like, you're right, thank you. So here's a question. I know, because we've been together, working together for a number of years, I know you've initiated 360 reviews. I think one of the ways to add accountability, sometimes people, what I'm not looking for when I say, do any of my idiosyncrasies bother you? I'm not looking for a pat on the back. I really want to know. You're going to help me if you expose my blind spot. So what you sort of initiated 360 reviews. How do you think that fits into this whole discussion?
Well, to me, you know, I think anything you're trying to do as a leader is systematize things that will make the whole team better. What a 360 review does to me is it systematizes that feedback. So you invite in a one-on-one meeting, hey, what of my idiosyncrasies are bothering you? Well, that's great, that's relational, that's happening in a one-on-one meeting. The question is, can I systematize that across the organization? And because not everybody, even though you may pattern it and you may say it and model it, not everybody is going to do that. So then the question is, if it's that important to you as the leader, then if it's that important, then you need to build a system around building that into your organization. And so the systematizing of it, to me, is what a 360 review does. It says, hey, both the people that work under me, those who are peers to me, those who work over the whole 360, everyone around me, am I hearing? Because I think one of the things that a blind spot could be reflected to the people who we lead in a different way than the people who are peers, and a different way to the authority that's over us. So you get that picture through those different prisms. And the feedback can be very interesting, because I'm thinking about, you know, what might come across as a blind spot to someone else. You might actually, in terms of someone that you lead, when it actually comes that you actually purpose to interact a certain way to the people that you oversee, and you interact differently with the people that are peers, and then you lead upward in a different way. That whole thing may be a blind spot, but the other thing it might reveal is there's some the ways that you are not consistent in your leadership. In other words, I lead people one way, I relate and lead peers a different way, and I lead upward a different way. All of that gets reflected back to you in a 360 review. So the system of building that into your culture, I think, is really critical.
Yeah, I totally agree. And a few of the 360s that I've done includes feedback from your spouse. That's one of the group. And you know, if anybody is going to be honest with you, it's probably going to be your spouse.
You would hope so. You would hope so.
I wonder if a 360 review is sort of like the electronic system in your side mirror. You know, a car that's in your blind spot, it lights up.
Right.
Now it lights up and even gives you a little noise,
Right.
To make sure you're
or
aware.
buzzes your chair and says, "Hey, don't get over there." Stay.
You're veering into a lane. Somebody's already there.
Yeah.
I wonder if a 360 review might be sort of like that.
Yeah.
That it helps do it. So if somebody were saying, okay, I don't think I've ever done, or our organization has never done a 360 review, what would you say? How would you initiate?
Well, I mean, there's several systems out there. I won't necessarily advocate for one of them, but you can build in of how to do that. But I think you got to be prepared to go all in and not hold back, and do it in a way that, as best you can. Now, you're not going to be fully anonymous, because you know the people who are your peers, but to where you remove the pressure enough from somebody that goes, I'm going to be able to be honest.
Yeah.
And if I have any fear that there's going to be retribution based on what I say or the feedback I give, you've got to really evaluate first before you just jump into that. Have I created a culture that invites feedback like this? Because if not, you're going to get a bunch of junk. Junk meaning it's not meaningful, because you haven't really created an atmosphere that goes, yes, feedback matters, and when you give the feedback, I'm going to value it. And if it's hard feedback, I'm not going to turn around and use that feedback that you gave about me, and I'm going to turn around and hurt you with it. So you have to really be self-aware enough to know, am I, and is the organization that I've created welcoming to this kind of feedback? The real truth is, when you get confronted with a blind spot, it hits you hard, because it's a blind spot. You may totally disagree. Yes. You go, no, that's not me. That's kind of like even what you said earlier. Kind of hit. I'm not late. Blind spot. I'm not late. So this is what rears up in you, is this like defensiveness and denial and all that kind of stuff. So that's what can really hit you. But a real lid to your leadership is going to be a lack of awareness of your blind spots.
Yeah, and the humility that it takes to say, okay, I don't see this, but if you're leading a team, to say to the team, okay, I wasn't aware that I had this blind spot, but now that I am aware, I'm going to ask you, when you see me do this, call me out.
Yeah. Have you ever gotten feedback, or have you encountered leaders who, when talking about blind spots, they view that as a weakness? Do you think they're, a roadblock to me even pursuing, understanding my blind spots? When I begin to do that, I'm exhibiting weakness. Do you think there's people who struggle with that?
I think maybe it's more common that a leader who wants to have some level of accountability in their life will look outside the organization for that accountability, and not invite peer level or reporting accountability to say, hey, this is what I believe, these are the values that we have, and if I am not reflecting them, I want you to call me out. They would say, I have a mentor that does that for me.
Yeah, I have a very contained group of people who I know the feedback they're going to give me, and I feel very safe in that environment, so I'm going to get feedback from those people.
Yeah, and you're not it.
Exactly.
And I tell them what I think my blind spots are, and usually they go, no, that's not a blind, no, I see you doing that all the time. Yeah. In other words, there's not really accountability. They don't live with you as the leader. So.
Yeah. Well, I think what you identified, your question about inviting feedback on your idiosyncrasies is pointing to a pain point. And here's the real pain point. All of us lead people who are having to work with us and work around our own dysfunction. Yeah. Right? And our dysfunction might be completely varied. To some people, very healthy people, dysfunction might be low. You still have a blind spot. Other people may be highly dysfunctional leaders, and yet they're still leading, blind spots galore. People are having to work around us. And so I think the dynamic of inviting that and helping to confront somebody who goes, this is an aspect of vulnerability that I'm not comfortable with, then what basically you're saying is I'm going to keep a lid on my team and a lid on my leadership because it's an area of growth, that I'm not willing to address. There's two different ways when I think about how we develop as leaders. And there's two systems that we've worked with before. One is Strength Finders. Strength Finders, love it, great. It's about finding what you're strong in and what the strengths are and then maximizing those.
Yeah.
There's another system that we worked with, which was all about identifying where you're weak and focusing on that to then, when you shore up your weaknesses, it helps push everything else up. Two different kind of perspectives about this, two different ways that you can view how do I get better and how do I work on the things in me that will make me better. Do I work on all my strengths and then exponential growth, or do I work on my weaknesses? And I think what I would say is it's a combination of both. I would more heavily lean on what am I strong in, emphasize that, go with that. However, if I just ignore where I'm weak, or let's call those the blind spots, areas that either I'm weak in or that I just simply don't see, then I will miss an aspect of growth and development as a leader.
Yeah, I think as leaders, every person in an organization is responsible for their own individual growth. You can't have a laissez-faire attitude and expect the organization to develop and continue to grow around you. Or if it does, it'll grow and go beyond you, and then you'll be left in a spot where you're irrelevant to what the organization needs. Probably the most radical story I ever heard about wanting help and trying to address a blind spot is, a guy said he went to address a group, speaking at a conference, and it was a fairly large conference, and he did his session, he spoke, and he took one of his team with him. So he's done speaking, they're heading home for the night, they're in the car, and he says to his team member, give me some feedback. Where do I need to improve? And the team member, relatively new to his team, said, oh, you were great. Man, it was awesome. And he flowered him up. And so he stopped the car and he said to this new guy on his team, get out. And he goes, what? And he said, get out. And he goes, what are you talking about? He said, I need people around me who will help me.
Yeah.
I don't need people to flower my situation. And you have to, so my point in telling the story is, you have to create the environment that will allow that level of feedback. And so if you're thinking about this and think, yeah, my organization really needs this. Everybody around me needs this. I don't need this.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to play the game.
Yeah, and maybe if you need help figuring out how do I jump in and even just start this, I'll just give you this just simple phrase. Call a team meeting and go, guys, I've recognized something about myself, and I have some blind spots. Now, because of that, I don't know what those are. And so I want to invite a conversation that will allow me to learn and grow with you. Now, you might do that in a team setting, but actually invite the conversations to then be one-on-one.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who maybe they're in an organization and they want to give feedback about a blind spot to somebody? What's the right way to approach that?
Well, it depends. So if you're giving feedback about a blind spot at peer level, I think you approach them as a friend. You say, hey, I don't know if you're aware of this, but can I give you some input?
Yeah.
If they tell you no, I would say respectfully back out of the situation.
Yeah.
That you've not been invited into that space. If you have somebody underneath you that is saying that, then it's your opportunity as a leader to humbly say, sure you can.
Yeah.
What
I love about what you said there, because a lot of times we may think, my goal is to help somebody, so they want to know this. So I think actually leading with the question of, hey, are you open to some feedback?
Yeah.
Would you mind if I gave you some feedback? And then be prepared. They might say no, and that's okay. If anything, what it did, it told you a little bit about either your friend or told you a little bit of something about your leader.
Yep.
And that might lead you to take some other action of knowing, I don't know that I want to work for somebody who isn't open to feedback. So you might want to consider that, and actually going to that point of asking that question might actually open up a window into the leader that you didn't have before.
Yeah, and one caution I would give in giving feedback is don't be legalistic. Don't be arrogant and harsh, thinking I can give you this feedback because I'm perfect.
Yeah.
You know, nobody, I don't care who it is, likes to be corrected by somebody that's a know-it-all.
Exactly.
And so,
humility is the key.
A humble approach
Yeah.
to and genuine care
Yeah.
for improvement is what's required.
Well, and also recognizing I might be wrong.
Yeah.
Or I might not have the full context of what you're dealing with. And so
good.
when I approach it with, hey, can I give you some feedback? And this is just my perspective. It's always leading with a bit more of a positive thought, and the positive thought about the person. Maybe I want to believe the best about them, but I'm seeing something, you may or may not know this. And then, boy, that could create a conversation where they go, oh man, I can see how you see that. That's actually not my intention at all, blah, blah, blah. I go down this road, and suddenly the relationship has been improved and grown. All right, can we do a little exercise?
Sure.
Tell me a blind spot that I have. And this is unrehearsed.
Okay. So
Help people. So here, this is me. I'm a leader. I go, hey, I got some idiosyncrasies. I know that. You and I are working together. We work together for a while. There's some things I don't know about myself. Could be a blind spot, or could just be feedback that you have.
yeah, so I'd say, hey, do you mind if I give you some feedback? When I work with you, I really love working with you, but you quickly pass off responsibilities, and it makes me feel like you don't care. You got the monkey off your back, and you put it on my back, and you're done. And
is this just a random example, or is this actually feedback to me?
Well,
No, I know it is. I know it is. I'm teasing. Yes.
did you want a real example? and so what that invites, even in this conversation, you might say to me, you know, what I know about you, thank you for the feedback. What I know about you is you like all your ducks in a row, and just because I don't put my ducks in a row doesn't mean I'm not actively engaged.
Yeah.
And so that opens up a dialogue. But
Well, and let me just say, because I think you gave real feedback. I think that's, and so thank you for that. I see, I don't know that that's even necessarily a blind spot, because I see what you're saying. I can see that about me, but now I get a picture to see how it affects you.
yeah.
And so that's helpful feedback. And the blind spot there probably is knowing how I'm thinking, how that's affecting you.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily not see that, but I see that it might affect the people I work with in a way.
So often in organizations, the pace of work in an organization is like driving in a car, fast. And it's like, I'm trying to get to a destination here, produce a result here. I need to change a lane, and I got to switch lanes really fast. And you don't think about the impact that there might be somebody next to you. And this is, I think, a really important concept of organizational leadership, no matter where you are.
Yeah, yeah.
Now,
Thank you. I was waiting. I sat there silently to see, are you going to invite?
yeah. Now it's your turn. Do you see any blind spots that you want to speak into? Do any of my idiosyncrasies are they bothering you?
You know, I think the great thing about being at your stage of life is you probably have every awareness of every blind spot that you have.
I promise you, I don't.
Well, I will say this. I don't think it's a blind spot maybe in the same way that mine was, and the effect on people. But you have such a positive outlook, and your positivity is such a value. It keeps sort of vision moving forward. It's a great thing. I don't know that sometimes you see that positivity causes you to overlook what could be some holes or a minefield you're going to walk into. and that could cause you to just positively walk too far in a direction that might not be where you wanted to go, because you didn't necessarily give the proper assessment to what could be some negatives.
True. Like you, I would say I think I have an awareness of that, but what I don't know is in a specific situation, am I being too positive here? You know, and that will, with that feedback back, it will give me the opportunity to say, hey, you know, we're dealing with this, and this is the way I really feel. I think this is going to be great, but am I looking at this too positivity, with too much positivity? What do you see that I'm not seeing?
Yeah. Well, look, like I said, this was a real-time, unrehearsed dialogue. And the thing that I would say is, even in seeing that, this isn't so prescriptive that when you're asking a question, you get an exact back and forth. It could be even a little clunky in what you're trying to figure out. But at the end of the day, what it does is it helps each other and helps to forge a deeper relationship when you do it. So any other topics we want to cover in Blindspots?
We've covered everything about blind spots. Everybody's got them. We need help to overcome them.
Yes.
And feedback is our friend.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're going to close out. Dad, I want you to pray for us. I just want to invite you, if you want to know more about what we talk about, if you go to executiveleaders.com or click the link in the bio, you can learn more about what we do, how we cover these topics and more in the various programs that we do through ELI. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you learned a way to either understand your blind spots better today, or a way to have a conversation that gets you to understand your blind spots. So why don't you pray us out, Dad?
That's right. Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for our friends who are tuned in to this podcast. And I pray, Lord, that you would open our eyes to see the blind spots in our life and surround us with people who care enough that they'll speak truthfully to us about the blind spots that we have. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. We'll see you next time.
Bless you.